Hello and welcome back to the EDC Squirrel. This is another Remette, one from their premium line that I've been excited to get. Had a hard time waiting for this one. And this is the Remette RT-Saker Falcon. Now, to get the specifics out of the way, the RT-Saker Falcon is or has an overall length of 7.32 inches, a blade length of 2.99 inches, a closed length of 4.25 inches, and has a weight of about 4.8 ounces. The blade material on this one is S45VN. Actually, the first knife I own with S45VN. And according to the website, the blade hardness of this one is roughly around 60 to 61 HRC. The blade itself has a hollow grind and is done in a fine satin finish. The handle material is made out of titanium, and in my case, I've got a purple and black carbon fiber inlay. This also has a titanium, I believe, like a lightning strike accent around the pivot collar. As you can see here, there are cage ceramic ball bearings, and this is a button frame lock is what they call it. This particular knife has thumb holes for deployment and also a rear flipper. Now, they said button frame lock. You can see the frame lock here on this side, but on initial viewing, you don't see anywhere they have a button. Although they do have this interesting little switch. We'll get to that in a little bit. You do have a titanium pocket clip, which is not reversible. And you also have a little bit of a backliner here with a spot for a lanyard attachment. All right, well, let's take a closer look at that blade. Now, again, you have a rear flipper for deployment. You have thumb holes for deployment. One thing I did notice is the detent on this knife is exceptionally strong. Now, I'm able to manipulate it with my thumb. Obviously, I can manipulate it with a rear flipper. But spidey flicking seems to be a little bit more difficult to me. I've done it a couple times, but the detent on this knife is so strong that I actually really struggle with trying to open it with a spidey or reverse flick. So in the meantime, I'm kind of stuck with using either my thumb or the reverse flipper. Or, yeah, the rear flipper, I should say. Now, if you've noticed, I've been utilizing the frame lock with my thumb. They do have a generous enough cutout on the scale and handle to where I can actually manipulate the frame lock with just the pad of my thumb. I don't have to dig my nail into it in order to get to that frame lock, which I really, really like. It's very comfortable. It's not hard to do. And again, I'm not having to dig and already ruin my I don't have to ruin my already ruined thumbnail to get in there. But the interesting part about this one is if you don't like to use frame lock knives, if you're not comfortable with passing your thumb to where that blade will eventually be moving towards, it is a button frame lock. And the button that they're referring to is right on the pivot. If you press down on the pivot, you can see the pivot pushes the frame lock out of the way. So you can use that pivot button to unlock the blade without ever having to pass your thumb in front of where that blade is going to be moving around towards. And as you can see there, and because of that, also the button acts as a third way to deploy the blade. Now, it is very snappy, very positive click when the blade locks, as you can hear. And when it's open, it's a very, very solid lockup. I'm not getting any movement on that blade, left or right, up or down. Extremely solid. Now, looking at the blade itself, it is a Tonto style blade. And you see you got satin finish on the blade, a bit of swedging at the top, a generous amount of jimping on the spine with a little swoop up there, which makes it really nice, a really nice place to rest your thumb for more precise control. They do have a bit of a choil here, although it's not particularly large. It's more of a sharpening choil. My fingers are really actually too big to comfortably utilize that as a finger choil, and I do get pretty close to where that sharp blade is. So I think it's more for ease of sharpening. But you do have a generous amount of space for your thumb, which allows for good, precise control with this knife. And as you can see here, we have a compound, I can't even talk, compound grind. We have a hollow grind at the belly of the blade itself, and then when we approach the tip, it's a flat grind, adding strength to the point. You get a little bit of swedging back here. And another thing of interest to note with this Tonto style blade is there's a very, very slight hint of a reverse curve to this edge. It's very, very slight. I really had to, I kind of had to do a double take to look at it, but a very slight recurve to that edge on the belly. Now it's very, very minimal. I could see with a sharpening or two, that could actually probably flatten out if it's something that you're not interested in, if that type of blade edge is something that you don't like. But I found that to be really interesting and might be pretty functional in keeping the blade edge in the right, like in a specific spot when you're cutting through material, as opposed to having the blade wanting to skip off or move off the media. But I thought that was pretty neat. On the blade, we have Remette right below the spine. And on the other side, I don't see anything actually completely clean. I'm not seeing any note of the S45 VN steel, which I find kind of interesting because usually you'll see the manufacturer on one side and they'll normally mark the type of steel somewhere on the blade. And if I don't see it on a flat portion, then usually I'll see it like somewhere like around here, around in there on the blade, but I'm not seeing any other markings. So all we have is the Remette etched on this side. Other things of note on this one, like I said, the detent is very strong, very clicky, but once you have the blade deployed, again, they have this little switch here. And I thought this was also really neat. Now, in the down position, this acts like any other flipper. Flick the blade out, frame locks. You can use the button or the frame lock to disengage. But if you flip this up, that little switch, so you push it up when the blade is deployed, it actually locks the blade in place. And now you can't manipulate the frame lock. You can't manipulate the button. It effectively, in a way, turns this kind of into a fixed blade. So it can't actually like close on anything. Not that it would, because that frame lock is really, really solid. But it just ensures a strong lockup. Again, kind of fixing the blade in place. I don't know if that lock has any function when the blade is closed. It does not appear to be. So in fact, I can't even push up on the switch once the blade is closed. So you can't lock the blade closed. It's not like a safety to keep the blade from flipping open, but it definitely makes for a neat addition in regards to keeping that blade locked open. And I wonder maybe if it's like, again, for those that want to be able to utilize their folder more like a fixed blade, because that really locks that frame lock in place. And it is a strong frame lock, reinforced. I can see in there, I see like a steel insert inside that frame lock, and it's very, very strong. Again, no movement, like I said, on that blade once it's locked open. But pretty cool little thing that they added onto this knife. Now, let's take a look and see how sharp this is out of the box. Now, I haven't done any cutting with this before. I haven't done any honing with it. Again, I just opened it up yesterday. And nice and smooth feeling. Fit right into that paper. And watching the paper, again, there's a bit of that recurve. It's very slight, but it almost helps keep the paper on the belly. Now, I did notice when I got to that point, it's when I got to that secondary point on the blade, when I got where it tore here. So I don't know if that transition is either not very sharp or it's just affecting the way it cuts through the paper. But the blade itself feels very sharp all along that edge. Let me take a look at that again. I'll try to do it a little slower. So I want to see how that secondary point acts. No, cut through pretty well. Yeah, all along both edges, the belly and that tip, nice and sharp. Feels very smooth going through this paper. Almost like it's not even there. And it sounds really good as well. Taking a closer look at the blade again, I am seeing a little bit of magazine debris stuck to the edge. I'm not feeling any burrs on the edge at all. Nope, nice and smooth. It's not a mirror polished edge, but really sharp, really well finished. I don't normally get Tanto blades because to me it's like when I have to sharpen a Tanto, I have to deal with, it's like sharpening two knives and you're only dealing with one because you have two very distinct edges on the knife. But I really like the looks of this one. It's really neat with that slight recurve in there. I don't know how that's going to be when I resharpen it, but I do like it initially. Nicely finished blade out of the box. Very impressed with it. Now I forgot to check. Let's see. When it's closed, nicely centered in that well. I know on camera it's a little weird. It looked like it might be off a hair. But when I look at it with my naked eye, it looks perfectly centered. So I don't know if it's because how I have the camera set up or not. So really well centered in there. Again, super smooth blade movement and really quick deployment, especially with that rear flipper. And like I said before, super strong detent on that blade. Probably, I manipulated the switch. Probably, if anything, I can't really say I have any complaints on this blade. The most minor thing I can think of is the strength of that detent. Now, you'd think the strength of the detent wouldn't be a complaint, but I would just like to be able to Spidey flick this without any issue. But because of the strength of that detent, it's really hard to do so. At least for me, it is. Again, I can utilize my thumb without a problem, but overcoming that detent with a reverse flick is really difficult for me. But it's not a big issue, again, because you have, again, your thumb, you have the rear flipper, and you even have the button, oops, that you can use to deploy. So it's very, very minor. And again, very snappy, very quick, very satisfying click when this locks up. I can easily get a good gorilla grip on this one. Very comfortable to hold. We got some lightly beveled edges on the back and around where you would put your thumb across for unlocking the frame lock. Now, they didn't quite do the edges the same way along this part of the blade, or this part of the handle. In fact, they have a bit of milling here, and I think that's to help provide a little bit more grip on that titanium handle. The purple and black carbon fiber looks absolutely gorgeous, and I love that lightning strike accent around the pivot. It's a very, very beautiful knife and very fidgety. I'm finding that click when I deploy the knife to be very satisfying to hear. It's actually quite loud, but very satisfying. Even with using the button on the pivot, it's a very satisfying click when that frame lock engages. Now, the price on this one, if we look at Remette's website, they have an MSRP, I believe, of $336, making this actually the most expensive knife in my collection. Realistically, though, on their site, they're selling this for $285. Now, I have looked this up on various other sites, and everywhere else I happen to look, they are running this same knife for about the same, the $285. But let me take a quick look one more time just to re-verify. If we go to Knife Center, yeah, I am showing $285 on their website. If I go to Blade HQ, I am also showing $285 on their website. So they're right in line with Remette's own website in terms of price. They do have two other options other than the purple and black that you see here. They do come with a blue and black carbon fiber. And also, I've seen it called two different colors, but it's actually only one other option. It's like either a yellow or a green with black carbon fiber. So I've seen it named yellow, I've seen it named green, but however, it's from what I've seen, it appears to be the same colorway. Again, all three colorways, $285 on this one. So yes, like I said, this would make this probably the most expensive knife I have overall in my collection. Do I regret it? Not at all. The materials, the S45 steel blade, the beautiful carbon fiber inlay and titanium inlay for accents. I love how you can lock the blade out. I love the fact that you have a frame lock that can be manipulated in two different ways, where instead of just giving you the pivot lock, they kept the option to be able to disengage the frame lock like you would any other frame lock. I love that they do that. Again, my only and super minor complaint is how strong that detent is, which really shouldn't be a downside. I just wish I could spider flick this a lot easier. I've only been able to do it on, like, a handful of times since I've had this one. And it's quite possible that the more I manipulate this blade, that it might break in a little and allow me to do that a lot easier later on. But I have a feeling that could take some time, considering the premium steel that they use for the blade and I don't know what materials they use for that detent, but I can't imagine it wearing down anywhere soon. But maybe it'll wear in. Maybe it'll be a little easier to manipulate like that in the future. We'll just have to wait and see, because I've only really had this knife this would be like the second day that I've owned this knife. So that's my thoughts on the Remette RT-Saker Falcon. Let me know what you think about this in the comments below. Do you have one? Are you thinking about getting one? What do you think about it? If you do have one, I'd love to hear your thoughts on these knives, and like to hear different opinions, and it just helps me learn and keep an open mind. But again, let me know what you think down below, and thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for your support. If you haven't yet, hit like, hit subscribe, and then hit the notification bell. That way you're notified as soon as I drop a new video. You guys have been amazing. I love all the support that I've been getting. I'm doing these videos for fun. I don't get any knives for free. All these knives I pay for out of my own pocket, and I've just been enjoying making these videos for you guys. So I hope you guys are enjoying it as much as I do. And that's it. Hope to see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.